I asked what are your biggest concerns about a potential visit to Japan, and this is how you responded. Some on this list are totally valid worries, but can be helped with solutions we'll get into. Some are understandable, but I'll hopefully demonstrate why there's nothing to worry about. And some are simply out-of-date concerns that I'm hoping to dispel and calm your thoughts. If this video helps just one person, then it will all have been a big waste of my time, but I'm hoping that won't be the case, so let's talk about it. We'll start with one of the two biggest concerns people had about a potential trip to Japan: the language barrier. This was the most frequent response I got, and the good news is, if this is the biggest thing holding you back from what could be the potential trip of a lifetime, I promise it shouldn't be, and here's why. The first time I went to Japan was 2011, and every visit since, the country gets better and better with language barriers. Yes, it's going to be more confusing than a potential trip to Iceland, for example, but there are more English signs, English menus, more broken English speakers than ever before. And there is a reason for this. In the last few years alone, the Japanese have simply had way more experience with foreigners compared to the decades prior, so they are much better equipped to deal with tourism. And the end result is, more often than not, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with the amount you'll understand. There will of course still be a language barrier. Not everything will be in English, but enough that matters is. The icing on the cake though is how attentive and perfectionist Japanese customer service can be. It is also part of the fun when traveling, having those slightly confusing moments, so just enjoy them. Whenever I'm solo in Japan and I'm a little confused, its people have always been patient with me. It should be said though that once you venture off the tourist beaten path, things will definitely get harder, so it just depends how much this bothers you. I'll be covering suggested itineraries later in this video, and the countryside is a part of that, but there is a difference between tourist countryside and countryside. So venturing out of the big cities is still easily achievable if language is a concern for you. But what are some solutions when things do get tricky? Number one is to download the Google or Apple Translate apps. These help converting your spoken words out loud or translating written text such as menus, and they work surprisingly well. How else would you know about the pride this restaurant has for its fluffy bread? It might not be perfect, but it is good enough. You will of course need data for your phone for these two apps. For every trip we've taken over the last 3 years, we've used an eSIM which works on most phones nowadays. This isn't sponsored, but I do have a link below that gives you a 15% discount as a newbie or 10% off as a returning customer, so I'll leave the one that we typically use in the video description below. As ever, I've also created a free written PDF version of this video with links to hotel suggestions around Japan, as well as other tips mentioned throughout this video. Lastly, on this topic, I wanted to teach you my favorite Japanese word that sits outside of the usual ones but is super useful. Sumimasen. Sumimasen. It basically means excuse me and is so versatile. Helpful when you bump into someone in a busy Tokyo, when someone's back is turned and you're politely asking for their attention, when your grasp on Japanese isn't good enough because, let's face it, this is a two-way situation and you're slightly apologizing for any confusion. Sumimasen. Now let's talk about the biggest misunderstanding with present-day Japan, and one I hope to completely remove from your assumptions. And that is Japan being expensive. Our month here followed 10 weeks traveling around Southeast Asia, and I kid you not, Japan was sometimes cheaper than Bali, sometimes cheaper than Thailand. This Tokyo hotel per night, $53 US. This apartment in Osaka per night, $45. This Tokyo restaurant with one ham cutlet at $5, one beef yakisoba at $5.50. This 40-minute Tokyo train from our hotel to Shibuya, $2.70. These lunchtime sushi boxes, $2.40. This super popular central Kyoto attraction, $3.30. The greatest egg sandwich you'll ever eat, $1.70. You really have to hunt these down, by the way, they are life-changing. A day ticket for Tokyo Disneyland, $55. PS, check out this video for how that went. The largest cafe latte that Starbucks has to offer, $3.85. Japan's economy has unfortunately been stagnant or declining for decades. There are many reasons for this, but the end result is a country that's generally hesitant to raise its prices and now a weakened currency. Of course, like anywhere, Japan can be cheap and can be expensive. This 4-course Kobe beef menu came in at just under $100 per person. But my point is, this country isn't expensive by default. And that the key difference with Japan is that the lower end restaurants and hotels have a much higher quality than you'd experience elsewhere. So if you want to keep your costs in check, it is certainly possible, and you don't have to grit your teeth whilst doing it. As highlighted in this recent Abroad in Japan video, you can spend $1,000 for an entire 2-week trip here if you're watching your spend. Even back in 2019, when things weren't as bad for the yen, I noted down every single transaction during our 14 days here, and that came out as $2,000 per person. This was eating out every night, staying at good hotels, packing in heaps of attractions, and traveling to 3 different regions by train. That video also covers cost-saving tips, and I'll link it in all the usual places to watch next. But unless some big economic change happens, in Japan currently, you don't have to spend a lot to get a lot. The second biggest concern after language was questions around using public transport. Now, this one is totally understandable and a valid concern, but does have a surprisingly obvious and workable solution. It's important to start out by saying Japan's transport network is clean, largely on time to the second, with regular trains and an experience in itself. The downside is that it is very confusing to fully understand what's going on, but when you break it down train by train, there is a pretty simple, non-flashy answer. All I do is put 100% of my faith into Google Maps, and it always works out. I have no idea how the network operates, or even mostly what's going on, but I can follow this app. It might surprise some of you that the train lands and platforms are signposted in an alphabet you'll understand, along with colours and numbers. So for this journey, for example, I see green, Yamanote Line, Platform 1, and I just follow those signs. Then once at the platform, I actually still go off the live departure times shown on Google Maps for my specific train. In all the big cities, departure signs are displayed in English also, but Google Maps was always in sync, so that's my starting point. Admittedly, I do still have nerves whenever I return to Japan and use its trains on my own, but Google Maps always sees me through. Here's also 2 messages I received and wanted to share, so you don't just think that it's me here living in another world. And if you have visited Japan, please do feel free to either echo my thoughts in the comments or disagree where you've had a different experience, in the hopes that it'll help others wanting to visit. For getting the tickets themselves, the easiest option is the Suica card, which you can collect at both Haneda and Narita Airport. These can also be used on buses where you just tap in and out. For the Shinkansen trains, you'll need to buy a separate ticket, but I would just purchase these from the service counters as it can get unnecessarily confusing via the ticket machines. It's also worth noting that the 2 times we were confused at Osaka and Hiroshima, we actually had English-speaking staff approach us and help purchase the tickets for us. But again, you'll work all of this out like everyone else does. Riding the bullet trains is always one of my Japan highlights. Grabbing a bento box for the trip and watching the world go by at an outrageous speed does not get old. And one final transport tip, if you are traveling from Tokyo to Kyoto, then try and sit on the right side of the train for a potential sighting of Mount Fuji on your way. Magical. Next, let's go through some quick etiquette and cultural questions that came up. Lots of these concerns centered around not wanting to do something that might offend the locals. Now, there are countless videos on this platform around this one topic alone, and feel free to watch them, but I can summarize with just 2 suggestions. Number 1, check if you need to take off your shoes when entering a new room, and number 2, don't be a dick. Honestly, as long as you're considerate to others, it really isn't something you should worry about. They'll understand you're not accustomed to Japanese rules and 99% of the time won't hold it against you. For those asking about Japan's reliance on cash, I must say this was this year's biggest surprise. Cash has always been king here, and you definitely should arrive with a bunch of notes. But we were shocked how much more widely card and Apple Pay was accepted this year compared to past visits. Previously, card was taken around 20% of the time, and this year maybe 70% accepted. There are plenty of cash machines all over the country. Again, you should just search on Google Maps. Sometimes, for whatever reason though, our cards weren't accepted, so if you do have ones from different banks, it is worth having a backup. You'll also be happy to hear that tipping in Japan is totally not a thing, so that's one less thing to think about. And tattoos in onsens are still a no-no. My best advice here is to book a hotel that has a private onsen, and then it's totally fine. This also reduces anxiety of parading around with your meat and two veg wafting in the wind for everyone to witness. Okay, so let's move into some more of the fun stuff. Some of you touched on questions around planning an itinerary, but also how to spread out the trip, where to visit, when to go. So this is totally subjective and can be used as a general guide or starting point. There is no one way to visit Japan, and this is solely based off places we have visited and enjoyed. But the classic 2-week first-time Japan itinerary would have 3 or 4 bases. So Tokyo obviously having the most things to do, Kyoto having some more of a traditional vibe with things, and then maybe some nature and a short stop somewhere else. This gives you the great variety of bustling city, traditional capital, and Japanese countryside. If you wanted a 4th area to visit and you aren't a super fan of Nintendo, I would personally skip Osaka and leave it for a potential return trip to Japan. It does have a very different vibe to Tokyo and is a great city, but I'd personally recommend the variety of something different over a second neon city after you've already spent time in Tokyo. But if you wanted to keep that 4th stop city-based and had 2 spare nights, I'd suggest Hiroshima. We visited for the first time this year, so I'll be making a video about it eventually, but we really enjoyed it. The 2 unique standouts were the incredibly powerful Peace Museum, obviously not a fun few hours, but possibly the most powerful museum you'll visit, and our #1 trip highlight, Miyajima Island. I cannot wait to edit this future video because it was so stunning, and I'm not even showing you my best footage here. Sorry, you'll need to wait for the dedicated video for the good stuff. But for a break from the city life, the countryside does provide a welcome contrast. Takayama is a relatively easy trip from Kyoto, with Shirakawa-go not too far from there also. But there's also a certain mountain that probably ranks #1 as the alternative. For Fuji, I'd suggest Hakone or Lake Kawaguchiko. Most of these places I just mentioned are featured in our 2 14 days in Japan travel vlogs, which despite being a few years old now, still holds up in terms of the major sites at each location. All the best hotels we've stayed at over the years are linked below in that PDF I mentioned also. In terms of the best areas to stay in Tokyo, as it's such a huge city, I've also added some updated suggestions on there and tried to cover different budgets. One final wildcard for you is Okinawa. I came here for 4 nights during my first trip to Japan and I loved it so much we returned this year. Flights from Osaka or Tokyo are just 2 to 3 hours away for as little as $50, and it's a very different side to Japan. Again, a video will be coming, but Okinawa is this country at its most laid back and its warmest, so it might be a great option for some of you. As for when to go, this is actually a pretty important question. Here is a general overview of what I'm about to go through, but the only period to really avoid is Golden Week. This is the end of April, beginning of May time. Everything will be packed, hotels pricier than ever, and likely with little availability. Visiting over the summer isn't out of the question, but it does have an asterisk to it. July and August especially can get swelteringly hot, and not in a pina colada kind of way, more like a day at the coal mine. But there are lots of great firework festivals taking place in August, so it does have its upside. June is seen as Japan's rainy season, they call it Suyu, and again, it isn't crazy to visit at this time, but something to keep in mind. The end of March, beginning of April is the best time for cherry blossom, and I've made a whole video about how to maximize this amazing time of year. Do be aware though that this is very much peak season, so not good for avoiding crowds, which we'll get onto next. On the flip side, Japan's autumn season is equally stunning around November, but again can be busy. September and October are solid shoulder months where crowds will have died down, but the winter temperatures haven't yet crept in. Speaking of winter, we visited this year late January into February, and it was surprisingly nice. Outside of Okinawa, it was a little cold, but only around 10 to 15 degrees everywhere else. One difference we found compared to England, say, is that the sun was out a lot more here. So unlike a grey winter's day in the UK, the direct sun really helped, and it often felt warmer than it looked on paper or screen. One concern I got way more than I expected was about Japan being too busy and dealing with crowds. Again, this is a totally valid concern, but does depend on how much of a deal breaker this is for you. We live in London, so that is admittedly our baseline, but there's only really two places I've been and felt impacted by too many people. The first is Tokyo Disney, which I'd urge you to check out this video as it's literally the worst example of crowds here, and the other is Kyoto. Since its space is much smaller than Tokyo, but it's equally popular, it feels way more packed. For me though, it's never been so bad that it's unpleasant. I mean, it still remains popular for a reason, but I just advise seeing the busiest attractions early or late in the day. So the Kinkakuji, Kiyomizu-dera, Fushimi Inari shrines, or the Bamboo Grove all being slightly notorious for crowds. And we both hate queuing for food, no matter where we travel. So we almost always move on to somewhere else. But Japan has so many good food places that we always find somewhere else to visit and aren't looking at TikTok for inspiration. For Tokyo, it is a very busy place, obviously, but in its defense, that's kind of its thing, so it feels like part of the experience. I mean, what is Shibuya Crossing without all those people crossing it? I have never seen this site with my own eyes, but I'd suggest avoiding rush hour if you value your space. So if the crowds are a real concern and you still want to visit, I'd advise visiting mid-January to mid-March, as we just did. Just don't go to Disneyland. Food in Japan is one of the highlights for many people, but this was also one of your hot topics, especially for people with allergies, vegans or vegetarians, as well as general questions around finding English menus and food you can enjoy. The allergies concern is the biggest one, especially if your reaction could be severe. Although not perfect, the best advice I can give is a really useful website I'll link to below that translates most dietary requirements to the restaurant. The idea is that you can print them out beforehand as cards or show them from your phone, and is a useful tool that may be sufficient. For vegetarians and vegans, again, this can be a little tricky, but certainly not impossible. Japan is a lover of fish, and they often use fish extract in stocks, which then ends up in various sauces and soup. Soups? Soup. But the upside is that Japan is also a lover of tofu, rice, mushrooms, edamame, so yes, they are meat eaters, but vegetables do also play a large part to the diet. The app you're probably already familiar with is Happy Cow, and it does cover Japan pretty well. I have some friends who used it along with Google Maps, and it worked for them, but it did require a little bit of extra planning. For those asking specifically about English menus, as mentioned, they are found in the big cities and tourist areas. The easiest phrase though to know is Eigo no menu. Eigo no menu. But if all else fails, just do the universal symbol for menu whilst looking slightly confused and they'll get the hint. If they don't have an English menu, you can always ask for the standard menu before sitting down and then try the translate apps I mentioned earlier. You can also search for the words English on Google Map reviews and you'll often get the general consensus. Finally, in the big cities, there are loads of non-Japanese food places around. Again, just search in Google Maps. But I would encourage you to try all the classic Japanese dishes while you're here. But yes, pasta, burgers, sandwiches, again, trust me on the egg ones, Indian food, pizza, it's all pretty easy to find. We also had several times where the menu was online, and then either our phones did the translating for us or they had English sections to their site. My personal top tip though for finding unique Japanese dining is by searching the word izakaya. These are casual diners serving smaller tapas-style plates to share as a couple or group. This is a great way to sample lots of different items, usually at a good price, and one of the main ways we find restaurants in Japan. So, did I help at least 2 people out there? Do explore our other Japan videos, past and coming soon, and check out the links to hotels, food and transport that I've placed below. Let me know if you've any further questions for a potential follow-up video, and as always, thanks for watching, Suitcase Monkey.